Welcome. I'm Dory Lambert, and I'm the coordinator for the SafeZone program here at Kansas State University, and I really am appreciative of you all coming today. Today we're doing a presentation with financial funding from the Provost's office, who's really allowed us to be able to tape some of these sessions so that we can make it available to the whole campus. We really appreciate that, especially given the financial strains on campuses at this time. The SafeZone program has been around for quite a number of years and had been revitalized in 2003 to truly become a more integrated program that is geared towards making this a safer campus community, a community of SafeZone allies who are working together to try very hard to make sure that the resources that are available on this very large campus are available to all campus community members. And so we train SafeZone allies, and we also make these more advanced training sessions available to the whole campus. So we welcome you. You want to hit that button? Now, we're going to have presentations dealing with the topic of threats on campus. And we have 4 very competent and very important people on our campus who are working with us today to present. We have Richard Herman, who's the captain in the K-State University Police Department. Clyde Howard, the Director of the Office of Affirmative Action, Heather Reed, the Director of the Office of Student Life, and Susana Valdivinos, who's the Director of the Office of Academic Personnel. It's a wonderful opportunity to have very important people on campus talking with you and sharing with you information that will help you be effective in this community. Thank you.
Thanks, Dory. K-State and universities in general are very safe places. We take pride in having an open, welcoming environment with free exchange of ideas where all people are valued and accepted. Unfortunately, when campus tragedies happen, like Virginia Tech and Northern Illinois, it concerns us and raises our consciousness about safety on our own campus. At K-State, we have stepped up our evaluation of our campus safety and enhanced many aspects of security for students, faculty, and staff. The most effective way to have a safe campus is to have a campus environment that is supportive and caring. SafeZone is an important aspect of our campus safety plan. Faculty and safety allies help by being aware of students who may need help, advocating for fair and equitable treatment of all, and modeling accepting and healthy behaviors. We want K-State to be a place where individuals who may be struggling or who are headed in a direction of some sort of violence to himself or herself or to others, where they can find the help they need and be directed and encouraged to get help. So, our #1 defense against violence is a strong focus on a community that supports nonviolence. You, as SafeZone allies, are part of this vast foundation of support and information on this campus. Today, we are going to describe how different threats are handled on campus and the offices that respond to those threats. We'll also have a quiz later that will help you understand various student situations and the way that you might respond to help. Then we'll wrap up by putting this information into a framework that should give you a good overall understanding of the topic. Threat management is actually a part of the larger, comprehensive K-State campus security plan. The K-State Crisis Management Committee and the Campus Security Measures Policy Work Group are the 2 groups on campus that have responsibility for policies and for responses to campus-wide emergencies. The Crisis Management Committee is comprised of individuals from across campus that collaborate to develop crisis response policies and guidelines, and also helps organize response to crises. This was the group that put together the response to the Virginia Tech and the Northern Illinois incidences, and would, in the case of a crisis here on our campus, assist with the response to the crisis as directed by the administration and law enforcement emergency management personnel. In addition, this newly formed work group through Vice President Rawson's office, the Campus Security Measures and Policies Work Group, is responding to the new requirements just passed by the Kansas Board of Regents. The Regents have hired a security consultant who will be evaluating the crisis and emergency management plans of each of our region's institutions. Crisis management is an important topic for universities, and our constituents expect us to have well-planned policies in place. Now, let's begin by a discussion of threats, those of a most serious nature which require a police response. Richard Herman will now present on those.
Thank you, Heather. First of all, just to reiterate what she was talking about a safe campus, the University Police Department's mission statement is to preserve a safe campus environment where diverse social, cultural, and academic values are allowed to develop and prosper. And this is done in many ways, one of which is the police department response. We have communications. Our objective is to communicate to the public, to other departments and agencies, to be alert, to stay on top of incidences and anything that may be occurring on campus. Currently, we have a 24/7 emergency 911 system. We have a dispatch center that is manned 24/7. We have a reverse 911, which is actually, it's called NTX, but it's a reverse 911 system that we can send out a reverse phone call from our office in a 911 system out to all the departments and the department heads and administration on campus. We have text messaging. I think if you have applied with that, you've received that during our tests and during our severe weather warnings. We will send a text message out to everyone who has registered their number with the system. We can use this not only in the severe weather, but in active shooter situations or emergency situations where we need to notify people on campus and let them know what's going on. We also have the KSU homepage, which will alert members of the university. They can go to the homepage if they get word that something's going on, and it will be updated and keep them informed. We have email. We send out an email to members of the campus, students, faculty, staff, departments. The carol on Anderson Hall, I think you probably heard that. It plays music every hour, and it's speaker system up in the top of Anderson Hall. We have designed that where we can give out voice messages, giving instructions to members of the university that are not in a classroom setting or in a building. So we can give a voice announcement through that. The K-State Police Department will respond to any incident that anyone thinks that we need to, basically. If you give us a call, we're going to respond, and we're going to make an assessment of the situation, and then we will notify the appropriate department, whether it be the Dean of Student Life, Greek Affairs, the Counseling Services, Threat Management, or Crisis Intervention Team, or whoever. Like I said, the University Police Department, we have a web page. It's K-State EDU Police. On that web page, you will see a silent witness. You can click on the silent witness. You can provide information about anything that you think is important and be anonymous. So you can contact us with information if you're suspected or if you hear of something that's going on campus. You can contact us through the silent witness program if you don't want to get involved. We will follow up on all the reports and everything that we receive on this silent witness program. Like I said, we're 24/7. We have police officers on campus, on patrol, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our policy reads that we will have at least 2 marked units and commissioned police officers on patrol at all times. So if we're down, and we'll call somebody in and put in overtime or whatever to make sure that we maintain two people on duty at all times. And we work closely with all the other departments on campus, like I said, with counseling services, Dean of Student Life, affirmative action, the provost's office, housing. We're always in communication with all of these groups, and we have a member of our department that's on the threat management team and on the crisis intervention team. And by doing this, we can hope to keep keep our thumb on the pulse of the campus and know what's going on, and be able to intervene early before something gets to the point of a Virginia Tech. If anyone, any member of the campus of the university, student, faculty, staff, anyone has any concerns about a contact that they may be having, especially like if you're a supervisor and you're going to do a counseling session, or you have to confront one of your employees, and you have any concern that there may be a situation that may turn violent or something to this nature, feel free to call us. We will come and be present or be in the area to assist in case it does turn bad. If it doesn't turn bad, no problem. We'll turn around and leave, but it's better to be safe than sorry in these type of situations. We also have the Wildcat Walk, which is 395-SAFE or 395-7233. We will have someone meet you wherever you may be and walk you to your destination, whether you've just arrived on campus and it's late at night and you're wanting to go to your office. We can walk with you from your car to your office, or if you're in the library or in your office late at night and you want to go back to your car, we'll escort you back to your car to make sure that you're safe, make you feel comfortable. We have 32 emergency or information phones. They're commonly known as the blue light phones on campus. They're like an intercom system. When you push the button, it rings in our office. Our dispatcher knows where that phone is. It's numbered, and it's just like your ID system on your cell phone or anything else. We know where that phone's at. If you're unable to speak or unable to stay right there, you're on the run from something or something, just hit the button on the way by. We'll send officers right away to that area, and we'll start going from there. So there are also information phones if you're lost, disoriented, you don't know where you left your car, this type of thing. They're for public use also. Like I said, you can use that system to call us for an escort from the Wildcat Walk. We have direct lines from our dispatch 24/7 with EMS and fire. We're very fortunate here at the university because the emergency medical services is half a block off of campus on Claflin Road. The fire department is actually on university property at the intersection of Denison and Kimball. The property that fire department was built on was actually university property. So we have a very quick response time for medical, fire, rescue type situations. Any personal property or safety training, we have a certified crime prevention officer. Be glad to meet with any group. If you get a group of people together that you want to do some training or just informing them of how to better care for themselves and for their personal property, we'll be glad to give these classes to you. There are some things in the future that we're looking at back on the communications. How are we going to notify members of the community if an incident arises or in the event of severe weather? And in fact, tomorrow there will be a test on the voice messaging. We will send out a voice message. We will call all of the cell phones that have been registered within the system. So those who do not want to pay for the text messaging can now receive a phone call. And we're going to test that tomorrow and see how that system's going to work. And any system that's new and you have to start with, you're going to have errors and glitches. We'll get these worked out, and hopefully then it'll be good to go. We're also working on sirens. We're going to put more sirens, excuse me, weather sirens on campus, just like the tornado warnings that we have now around the city. There will be 2 or 3 more of those on campus. They will also be equipped for voice messaging, so that not only will it be a siren for a warning, but they will be able to put out a voice message, instructions, where to go, where not to go, what you should do for your own safety and your own protection. Flashing lights on these sirens and throughout campus that will notify you that something is up when these lights are flashing. This is also good for the hearing impaired, that if they see the flashing lights, they know that they need to go to the web page or someplace to find out what's going on. They know that there's something wrong on campus. Also working on some notification devices for each classroom. This will take time. It is expensive and takes some technology, but eventually we hope to have some type of emergency notification system in each of the campus classrooms, whether it will be a text messaging screen that gives you the message, whether it will be like a direct line phone that will ring for the instructor to answer and get instructions, and this sort of thing. So there are more things that are being worked on, and we hope in the future to have these. Okay, thank you very much.
Morning. The Office of Affirmative Action plays a major role in dealing with threats that perhaps don't rise to a level of being a crime, but nevertheless are important for the university to address. Our mission is to ensure that departments comply with both the letter and the spirit of the law. Now, as we make sure that these things happen, there are a number of services that we offer. I would like to discuss most prominently here the service that we deal with relative to the investigation of complaints of harassment and discrimination. Now, as we look at those matters of complaints of discrimination and harassment, we deal with complaints of race, color, sex, national origin, religion, age, gender identity, sexual orientation, military status, veteran status, and disability. Staff will interview persons who make complaints to determine whether that complaint should be investigated by a team of persons who are appointed by a vice president or by the provost of the university. If an investigation is warranted, that team of individuals obtains all the available information, makes a determination, completes a report, and makes a recommendation of the appropriate action that the university should take to prevent a recurrence of those actions. Now, some investigations take a very short time, maybe a couple of 3 days. Others may take longer. But at the end of all of those processes, we will ensure that we've collected all the relevant facts that we need to make some kind of a decision as to what is the appropriate course that the university is required to take. If an individual has been harmed, we try to identify those actions that the university should take to put that person back whole. If it is a matter of having to retake an examination or to be moved to another course, to receive counseling or some other service that the university offers, then we will recommend that those things be taken care of, and we leave that then to the vice president or the provost in charge of that unit to ensure that those actions are taken. Now, every investigation, every complaint is treated with confidentiality. Every interview is held in a private setting. Now, when I use the term confidential, what I mean is we will not disclose that information in the complaint to any person who does not have a need to know about that complaint. Everyone that we talk to, we ask them not to disclose the fact that we have interviewed them. In some instances, persons will take it upon themselves to disclose information that they have also shared with us. But you can be assured that no one at the Office of Affirmative Action will disclose information about a complaint to any persons who do not have a need to know. Typically, the persons who have a need to know when we are conducting an investigation are members of the University Attorney's Office who advise the administrative review team during the course of its investigation. Otherwise, there aren't other persons that we would talk to share information about a complaint. Yes. Now, in another vein, the university has a workplace violence committee. That committee grew out of a policy that was developed by the state of Kansas. And the state of Kansas developed its policy because, as some of you may recall, in 1986, I believe, a part-time postal worker in Edmond, Oklahoma, who was a bit upset by a disciplinary action that was proposed for him, returned to work and, using a number of firearms, shot and killed a number of his co-workers. That prompted a number of actions on the part of the federal government. Foremost among them was to develop a federal workplace violence policy. And so every recipient of federal financial assistance, in turn, had to develop a policy. The state of Kansas then developed its workplace violence policy. At Kansas State University, there is a workplace violence committee. There are permanent members of the committee, the Division of Human Resources, the University Police Department, as Richard mentioned, University Counseling Services, the Office of the University Attorney, and there is an ad hoc member that is the responsible administrator from which the report was originally received. This group of individuals looks at all of the information that is available regarding a particular threat, a particular accusation that was made, a threat of violence, and makes a determination as to what actions the university needs to take to prevent anyone from suffering harm. Now, that may mean that the person who communicated the threat is removed from the university campus, or there may be other intervening steps taken. But be assured that every threat is taken seriously, and there is an action that is taken as a result of every threat that is passed on to the Workplace Violence Committee. Now, some of our issues do not rise to that level, but nevertheless, the university has put in place a dispute resolution clearinghouse. A number of years ago, then Provost James Kaufman established what we now call the Dispute Resolution Team and encouraged the development of a dispute resolution clearinghouse. That clearinghouse consists of all these organizations that are identified here. Each has a particular purpose. But as a clearinghouse, the approach that's generally taken is that each of us shares information among ourselves. And if there is issues that belong with one of us, then that information is passed along. Once we receive that information, if it belongs to us, that matter, then it is treated in a case management approach. Everything related to that matter is dealt with by that office in an attempt to resolve the situation. And once that matter is resolved, we also follow up to ensure that the person is satisfied with the resolution of that particular situation. Sometimes dispute resolution matters that begin as relatively mild situations become complaints, or things that start out as complaints end up in the dispute resolution clearinghouse. But in either case, those matters are dealt with in as best a way as the university can and in as reasonable a period of time as it can. Next slide. Now, in the near future, in 2009, those issues relating to violence against students will be handled by the Critical Incident Response Team, and Dean Reed made some mention of that earlier. What that basically means is that there will be an easy access for students to get quickly to that place where they can get the assistance that they need for whatever problem it is that they're having. So with that, I will thank you and have our next speaker.
Thank you, Clyde, and welcome to all. On behalf of the Provost's Office, my name is Susana Valdovinos. I am the Director of Academic Personnel, and I am going to talk with you about the Provost's Office responses. First of all, I commend you for your participation in this presentation. It is a testament to your interest in having a safe campus. The responses that I'm going to talk about are the responses of SafeZone Ally faculty members, instructors, and GTAs, but of course students need to be aware of their environment as well. Anticipating what may happen, what could happen, what has happened in other campuses is going to be our best approach, our best strategy to respond to threats on campus. So I would encourage you to familiarize yourselves with your teaching environment or learning environment, to know the physical aspects of the room, where the exits are, and to know what line of egress you would have to take should an emergency occur that you needed to evacuate the classroom. Include a statement in your syllabi. Those of you who are instructors or faculty members, include a statement in your syllabi that talks about the standards of conduct, the expectations that you have of your students. We have in the Provost website several samples of statements. The statement that I am referring to is a statement defining expectations for classroom conduct. And what this statement does basically is incorporate by reference the student conduct code in your classroom environment. There are also guidelines that the Provost's website has for faculty members regarding student conduct in instructional settings and in online courses and discussions. And these guidelines are also can be found in the Provost's website, and we have the sample of what that screen looks like. Basically, you as the instructor, as the faculty member, you are in charge of your classroom behavior, and you can set the guidelines, the expectations of the behavior you want to see your students, and of course you want to model for your students. That is very important. That is something that if you read those standards, if you read those guidelines, you will see that, for example, you have the authority to decide how students are going to conduct themselves in class. There are some faculty members who want to encourage participation that is free, but of course, setting, for example, certain standards, such as keeping a mind that's open, accepting, being respectful of the ideas of others, even if you disagree or if others disagree with those ideas. So by modeling and by setting the standards of conduct that you expect in your classroom, the probability of having a disruptive situation is going to be less likely, because you are anticipating, you are pretty much diffusing a situation even before it happens, and that is very important. If there is a situation when a student becomes disruptive in the classroom, there are many reasons why that could happen. Ideally, you will be able to immediately take charge of the situation. If necessary, ask the student to leave the classroom. If you need assistance, of course, you should be prepared to get assistance, even if it involves, for example, calling the police in a situation that, of course, calls for it. Have a discussion with the student, ideally in private, but keep notes of your discussion, what was said. Being respectful, dignified, compassionate is always important, because there are many medical reasons why students may become disruptive. There might be emotional issues that the student is personally dealing with that you might want to very carefully approach. Use campus resources, such as, for example, telling the student about the university counseling services, counseling center, and if appropriate, ask the student if he or she wishes to be accompanied to the University Counseling Center. So addressing the possible situations that cause the student to become disruptive is going to be a necessary next step. There are students who may have disabilities who may cause a situation in the classroom, and that's something that you want to make sure that those students are aware of the disability support services that this campus offers and be able to refer the student to those services. Now, what happens if there is threatening behavior in the classroom? You're probably going to want to direct the student to leave the classroom for the remainder of the period. There are situations that would warrant, for example, interrupting class and leaving the classroom. You might have to take the student to an appropriate resource, call the police, or something that is going to cause you to terminate the class, that particular class period, and deal with the situation. Similarly, there are times when online discussions, now that many of us use online resources, that online discussions may include a student who is disrupting the discussion. And the same strategies apply. In other words, you may ask the student to leave the discussion. You may ask that the student be taken away his privilege or her privilege of participating in those discussions. And those are some of the things that you can do. Now, I don't know how to... something that people sometimes claim in disrupting a classroom, sometimes, for example, using violent language in the classroom, people allege that they have an academic freedom or a freedom of speech right to express themselves in that manner. And again, remember that when you are in charge of your classroom, you have authority to set the framework for the discussion in the classroom. And yes, people have freedom of speech and may express themselves, but that expression should not hurt another person in the classroom or cause disruption in the classroom. Something that you need to always keep in mind when you are dealing with setting parameters of conduct and making sure that everybody adheres to those is to be consistent in how you apply the rules and make sure that all students are treated in a similar manner and that the rules are applied equally to all, of course, depending on the situation. the Provost's office also offers additional faculty development opportunities to deal with particular topics. And one of those opportunities is the first Tuesday roundtables, where we have topics of interest to faculty. And we have had, for example, dealing with threats on campus or safety on campus as one of the topics. But there are many topics that help faculty members and instructors have a better understanding of the management of their classroom and teach how to deal with situations in particular. We have workshops, we have lectures, we have orientation for new faculty members, and of course my office is there as a resource for faculty members who may be dealing with a particular situation, have concerns about a student or group of students in their classroom, and may want to talk about that before they take action. And with that, I am going to introduce you to Heather Reed again, Dean Reed, who is in the Office of Student Life.
When you talk about safety on campus, one of the largest concerns that we have, of course, is going to be for our students, because they're our largest group of individuals. They're here at a stage in their life where they're developing and growing and hopefully learning a lot. And occasionally they have struggles. And so within our campus, we have a number of wonderful ways we can support students. First of all, I'd like to tell you about the Office of Student Life. The Office of Student Life is like the clearinghouse for problems for students. Our office is in 102 Holton Hall, and we can do a number of things to help students. Probably the most common thing we talk to students about are either academic or personal problems. We are blessed to have a wonderful network of offices across campus that also help in various ways. So we have a very good working relationship with all of them, and oftentimes we'll work together on student issues. Academically, I'll show you here in a little bit a screen and a handout that you have in your packet that lists all the different offices and the contact person for that office. But when we talk specifically about academic concerns, we work with the students' advisors. We work with academic assistants to provide tutoring, study groups, and often liaison with the faculty member to see if there's any suggestions that they might have for the student to help them be academically more successful. And then personal issues, wide range of personal issues for students. Of course, the most tragic one to deal with is the death of a student, which is something we just experienced on Sunday night. We had a student who was killed in a car accident coming back to campus from home on I-70. He is a member of a fraternity, so his death has impacted a number of our students here on campus. So our office is the liaison with the family, and so we've spoken with them, and we've worked with them to spread the news about the funeral, the memorial services. But we also work with the friends of that student and fraternity members. Sunday night we actually went over to the fraternity and spent some time with the young men there who were struggling mightily with this. So our office is the contact for the most serious crisis too, but also those personal problems can range anywhere from relationship issues to just struggling with the transition to college, which we see a lot that first couple months of the semester, just students trying to find their way here in this new environment for them. And also seems like we have a number of students who deal with mental health issues too. Depression, anxiety are probably some of the more common, and we work closely with counseling services, referring students there, even walking them over to counseling services to make sure that they make that connection with the wonderful services we have for that. Some of the other things, if a student has felt they've been a victim of any type of harassment, racial, ethnic, sexual harassment, we're also an office that students can come and report that to, and then we go with them to affirmative action or make sure then they, if they would want to make a report of some type of a harassment or discrimination claim, that we support them in being able to do that. There's a number of policies on campus, such as grade grievance policies, or for graduate students who may have a graduate school grievance type of situation. We'll help advocate for students. We'll help take them through those policies, make sure they have an understanding of their rights and their responsibilities too. We also work with our K-State Women's Center to help respond to any type of sexual violence. We have a wonderful victims advocate in the Women's Center who does just remarkable work providing support for our students who have been assaulted or in a situation where there was sexual violence. Also in our office, we have an individual who is our religious coordinator, Eric Schwartz. He's the person who kind of coordinates all the campus ministries and also helps us as we're, like many times when we have a student death, we'll have an on-campus memorial, and he's the person who helps us organize those types of activities. Our crisis outreach, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about in our next couple of screens. We've got some protocols for various crises, and so I'll go into a little bit more depth with that in a second. And we'll also talk about our student judicial program, which the Office of Student Life is the advisor for that wonderful student-run judicial program. And probably one of the things that we spend the most time doing with students is just problem solving. So many times when they come to our office, it's just not one thing. They're dealing with multiple issues, and so just helping them, sitting next to them and problem solving and talking about their resources and giving them ideas of how to handle that. It's that developmental piece that we want to help students learn how to tap into their resources and learn how to solve their own problems. And so, anyway, on to the protocols, the response to crisis. A couple years ago, Crisis Management Committee came together and said, we just need some good, easy-to-follow protocols for faculty and staff to follow when they have a student crisis. And so we put together the crisis in three categories. The first one you're seeing here is the student safety crisis protocols. And I think you have a copy of that in your packet too. And it gives you, they're all in flowchart forms. And so it's very easy to glance through and see, for instance, if you have a missing person, what are the steps? If the student has shown up missing, or maybe one of your colleagues in your office has not shown up, what are some steps that you can take to address that? So those are all part of our crisis protocols. On the next screen are the medical and health crisis protocols. So we've got the top one is a student medical emergency, and it divides it into the serious medical kinds of things where you'd immediately want to call 911, or a minor medical emergency and give steps like utilizing Lafine and some other reasonable kinds of steps to take. And finally, the third is our psychological and mental health crisis protocols. This one seems to be one of the most helpful, because when you're in a situation where you are working with a student and you really feel like there's either they've made a comment about suicide, or they're hopeless, or mental health wise you just know they're not tracking well and something's not right, this gives a real easy to follow guidelines here. So, and it always asks first, is there imminent risk of harm? And if yes, then you go into the side where you're going to call 911. You're going to access the police, probably going to be a transport to the hospital, and then always our office needs to be notified so that we can make sure that family's involved. And then if it's not risk of harm, but there's distress, but not life-threatening, then the steps to take for that too. So these are just really helpful guidelines, protocols that faculty and staff can follow, and we hope that you'll find very useful. Next, another part of this crisis assistance information is all the different offices that we work with. And once again, you have this handout in your packet. But it goes down through, first of all, it gives you the 5 or 6 people who are on call and who can be contacted at any time regarding an emergency or a crisis. And I'm the lucky person at the top of the list. So usually it's myself or my colleague, Karen Lowe, who's the assistant director at Student Life, are first called, and then Dr. Bosco and Dr. Mike Lynch and are also on the list. So no matter what time of day, we're ready to respond to any student crisis. I mentioned to you earlier that we're also the advisors for the Student Judicial Program. And K-State is so fortunate. We have a student-run judicial. Many universities will just have an administrator person who, when a student violates the code of conduct, that administrator person calls them in and gets the information and gives them the sanction. At K-State, we have a student-run judicial. We have a group of 5 students who are appointed by our student body president to be on our student review board, and then we also have an appeal board called the Student Tribunal. So whenever a student violates a code of conduct, then they can be charged and taken in front of the student review board. And so far this year, I think we've had 3 or 4 hearings regarding various, it seems like typically one of the ones we're most concerned about is disruption of the learning environment. And so this is another way that faculty can address that disruptive behavior that they might have in their classroom is through a code of conduct violation. But basically all the kinds of behaviors that we expect students to have. And the nice thing about this is that students then are holding students accountable for the behavior that we want on campus. What can be more perfect than that, than the colleagues, the people that we work with, holding each other accountable. So this is a wonderful service to students and to all our faculty and staff. And next is just a screen that tells you just a little bit more about the general information about Student Judicial and more resources about that. Once again, it's a student government, SGA, Association, Constitution, and Bylaws, which established the Student Judicial Program. Okay? One of our most important jobs, I think, on campus is to be advocates for students. Because when they do find themselves in situations and they're either addressing a faculty member, a department head, or if like a graduate student with graduate school, that can be a pretty daunting kind of experience. And so we feel strongly about being advocates for students. And then there's some other things that we can do to help students too. So if they are going to be gone because of illness or because of mental health types of things or a personal family emergency, what our office can do is notify the instructors. And what we do is we'll only notify if we have verification. I have always felt like if I notify you and the student tells you the same thing but no one's verified it, what good does that really do to you? I mean, it really doesn't give you a lot of good information. But we verify either through a doctor's note, a therapist's note, or through the family what the issues are, and we share that information with instructors. Obviously, it's always up to the instructor about how they want to deal with that student within their classroom and according to their syllabi. And so we always just share that information. There may be times when we might say that it seems like accommodations would be appropriate, but once again, it's still the teacher, the instructor, the professor's call about how they will handle that, because there's no real such thing as an excused absence. we just share the information, and the teacher deals with that. We do, once again, we talk about all the referrals that we'll do to various offices on campus. So if we have someone who's struggling with a mental health issue, we get them to counseling services. Academic issues, we'll talk to our academic partners and academic assistants or various other places. But anyway, so just through the network, making sure the student has the appropriate kind of support. And some of the things we are doing at this point to enhance our work is this summer, the Crisis Management Committee had a subcommittee just look at our overall protocols about how we handle emergencies and crisis. And we looked at all the a lot of peer universities and to evaluate what are the best practices in this area. And what we found is that critical incident response team, which is a group of people, usually 5 to 6 individuals on campus, who are notified whenever there's a student threat or a serious illness or a serious situation that's come up. And so it's kind of like a case management approach to crisis. And what we've found and what we've learned from all the best practices that we can find is that this is the way that you can respond and make sure things don't fall through the cracks. And if you think about Virginia Tech, I know one of the evaluations that have been done about the response is that a lot of different people knew things about the shooter, but nobody was talking to each other. They didn't have a way of networking and pulling all that information together. So that's indeed what a CIRT, a critical incident response team, does. It pulls all the information together and then can make, we hope, a more informed, more appropriate response, and which can do a lot to keeping our campus safe and making sure students who need help get the help they need. Now, Clyde mentioned with the threat management team, whenever there was a student that was involved in a threatening situation, we had just used that same group that he described to deal with the student threat too. Well, now with the critical incident response team, this team will actually respond to any student threat. So we'll kind of pull the human resources, faculty, staff, and leave them with the more of the workplace violence response, and then we'll pull the threat or the student threat more into the critical incident response team, which I think will allow, I think it'll coordinate our response a bit better for students. So that basically covers that.
What we are going to talk about now is what campus resources or off-campus resources you can use in given situations. We have prepared a few scenarios, and they are multiple choice. We have 4 choices in each or most of the questions, and each of the questions may have 1 or more right answers. So let's get started.
So you've risen high in your organization, and now you supervise 2 junior scientists with H-1B visas from different cultures who withhold information from each other and accuse each other of incompetence. What would you do? Would you call the human systems consultant? Contact mediation services? Tell the scientists to work together or you will withdraw your sponsorship of their visas? Or choose A or B above? Correct answer is call the human systems consultant, contact mediation services, or choose A or B above. The human systems consultant is an individual the university has retained to assist in the resolution of just these kinds of issues. Mediation services also does that same thing.
All right, second question. The first week of classes, a student in your class seems very agitated. He paces around the room and talks to himself. When you try to talk to him, he looks away and won't respond. As a teacher, what should you do? A, call the police. B, ask for help from your department head or dean's office. C, walk the student to counseling services. D, file a code of conduct complaint for disrupting the learning environment. E, call Student Life and ask for help. So the correct answers: call the police. Now, this is correct if you really felt like this student was not going to cooperate with you. If they were obviously on down you have the option of walking to counseling services. Well, that's someone who's pretty cooperative and willing to accept the help. What happens in that situation, if you have a student who doesn't want help and continues to be disruptive and you can't communicate with them to settle them down, you're going to want to call the police. Your safety and the safety of the students in your classroom are more important. You need to get the police there for help. And asking for help from your department head. So if you've been able to kind of work it with the student and you just need some help as far as maybe classroom management ideas, talking to colleagues to see how they have handled these types of situations, probably be a good way to gather more information. So walking to the student counseling services, like I said, if they're they're wanting help and they're cooperative, that would be a good thing to do, because obviously there's some issues there that are probably mental health involved. Now, filing a code of conduct complaint for disrupting the learning environment is probably not a good answer unless there's really a serious disruption and there aren't other things going on. If it's just purely a student who is being difficult and uncooperative and is there to be disruptive, a student code of conduct complaint's a really good way to go, because that calls them to task for their behavior and they have to answer it, and there are consequences on top of whatever consequences you might have as a teacher. Another good answer is to call Student Life and ask for help. We get calls almost every day from faculty and staff wondering about how I might handle this situation or that, and we are happy to consult and work with faculty and staff to get ideas, or then to intervene with the student to help ascertain what's going on for that person and make sure that they have all the help that they need.
So when in doubt, call student services, the Office of Student Life, or if it has to do with faculty, call the Academic Personnel Office. You are an advanced graduate student. Your major professor is very demanding about her research and complains that you have not been doing your work diligently because you do not work 20-hour days in the lab. The pressure is getting to you and you feel it would be a terrible blow if you were not awarded the degree. You have been having self-destructive thoughts. What should you do? Should you drop out of the program? Go to counseling services? Talk to the dean of the graduate school? Threaten a lawsuit against your major professor? Well, dropping out of the program should not be your best approach. Going to counseling services would be a correct approach. If you can bring yourself to doing it, that would be the right thing to do. Talk to the dean of the graduate school, because there are issues among faculty members and students that need to be dealt with, because even though we do want the programs to be demanding and challenging for our students, we don't want them to break our students and cause them not to finish their programs, because it is not humanly possible to do it. Threaten a lawsuit against your major professor, that also would not be your recommended first choice, even though sometimes you feel like it.
A student has struggled during the entire semester with depression and anxiety issues. She is not coming to class or communicating with her teachers, friends, and family. She lives in an apartment alone. As her teacher, what should you do? Call the police and report a missing person? ask one of her friends to go by her apartment and check on her. Call the Office of Student Life, inform them of her situation, and have them check on her. D, do nothing. Calling the police and reporting a missing person is probably not something that you might do as a teacher. That might be something that you'd call our office and let us do a little bit more investigation before we would make that step. Ask one of her friends to go by. I've had this happen a couple of times. A faculty said, well, she has a friend in the class, so I just asked them to go by. Well, in normal cases, that might be okay, but you never know what that individual might find when they get to the apartment or how that person might be received. So that's actually putting a student in a very difficult situation and something better that we could handle in student life. And we probably get a call like this nearly a week, or students that are missing. My favorite one was last week. We had a call from a parent who hadn't been able to contact her son in 2 days. He usually called a couple of times a day, and he hadn't called, and she was panicked, and she'd been trying to contact him and he didn't answer his phone. And so we emailed and actually went to one of his classes to try to catch him to see, are you doing okay, or what's going on? And he was there, and he goes, I just forgot to charge my phone. Tell my mom. Well, why don't you come to our office and you can call your mom on our phone so she's not worried. So, but anyway, that would definitely be a correct thing to do, is call our office and let us do some checking. And obviously, don't do nothing. Don't do nothing. Please be sure that you communicate those kinds of concerns, because occasionally it is a situation that is very serious.
Remember, you're still in your exalted position as a supervisor. So what would you do as a supervisor to assist a student who tells you that a GTA has repeatedly made remarks to her about his sexual conquests and ask her questions about her sexual orientation? Would you tell the student to ignore the GTA? Take the student to the Office of Student Life. Tell the student you must inform the Office of Affirmative Action. Ask the student to talk to the GTA's supervisor. That is not a good choice, to just ignore a situation. In these kind of situations, as Heather said, doing nothing is not an option. Taking the student to the Office of Student Life may be an option. The important thing that is important for us is that you inform the student of the opportunity that they have to report the information to the Office of Affirmative Action, because it is through that process that, even if it's reported to us, we will in turn report it to the Office of Student Life. Asking the student to talk to the GTA supervisor is usually not a good option, because the student is concerned that, or typically is concerned that someone within that whole chain of authority will not do anything about this situation. Although that isn't always the case, it is often a concern that students have.
Oftentimes, students feel they do not want to get involved, and for that reason, they don't want to report an incident. But it is important to know that the university has a responsibility toward all of its students. So even if this particular, we may call victim, does not wish to report, there may be another victim, another potential receiver of that behavior that needs to be protected as well. And that is the reason why there are mandatory requirements to inform the Office of Affirmative Action of those situations. Now, what happens when your professor shows up late for a class a couple of times, and when the professor arrives, he did not explain why, but merely began the class at, where were we? Today he seems confused and is not following the thread of the class very well. Finally, he stares toward the door and walks out without saying more. What would you do? enjoy the free hour, call the police, report the events to the professor's department, or demand that the professor see a psychiatrist. Well, enjoying the free hour might be tempting, but something else needs to be done. Calling the police if there was a threat involved in that sequence, of course you would call the police, but the way we put the scenario, the correct answer would be to report the events to the professor's department, because now the professor's department is aware of what is going on and can take action. Demand that the professor see a psychiatrist. Although psychiatric attention might be necessary in this case, it will not be up to you to demand that the professor see a psychiatrist.
Like go back to that last one about calling the police. If this person is really out of it, I mean, you know, if you feel that they might just walk out in front of a bus because of their actions, that they're really not having no cognitive reactions to anything, yes, you might call the police. I mean, we would be more than happy to respond and see if we could be of assistance and activate other departments that could be assistance. So never rule us out. Okay, you hear arguing and yelling, things being broken as if they've been thrown down or against the wall, coming from an apartment or a resident hall room down the hall. What would you do? Would you call them and tell them to be quiet? You're trying to get some sleep or study. Would you call 911? It's their business, so why should you get involved? Go to the apartment and see what's going on. Well, you call them and tell them to quiet down. That might be a thought, something you could do, but there may be more going on there than you know about, so maybe you want to go a little further than that. Call 911. That would be the correct answer. We could respond if they're just a couple people roughhousing, having a good time wrestling around and things get knocked over and broke. That's one thing, but it's better if we check on that and find out for sure. It could be domestic in nature. You could have a couple that are having a bad day or a bad time. Things could be getting rough, and we definitely need to check in on that. Maybe somebody down the hall walked in on a burglary in progress, and there's a fight because they're trying to either save their property or just save themselves because they walked in unexpectedly and now they've become a hostage situation. So there's many things that could happen. So 911 would be your correct answer. You said it's their business, so do nothing. Here again, if we got a bad situation going on there and you do nothing, it could escalate and could get really out of hand. You sure don't want to go down there because, like we said, if it is a bad situation, whether it's in the heat of passion or what it is, if two people aren't getting along, you don't know what their reaction is going to be if you stick your head in the door. So you want to, for your own self-protection, stay out of the way.
So here we have a female student tells you that she's converted to Islam and is much happier with her life. As your advisor, what would you do? You're going to take the student to counseling services, contact the student's parents, wish the student well, tell the student you can no longer advise her. Taking a student to counseling services simply because she's expressed a religious choice is not a good approach. Contacting the student's parents also is not a good approach. She's simply expressed, as I said, a religious choice. On the other hand, supporting the student by wishing that student well in their religious choice is the correct answer. There is no option to tell the student that you can no longer advise her. The university does not assign its advisors on the basis of religious choices that persons make. Indeed, making such a choice on your own may very well constitute a basis for that student to file a complaint.
The principles of community that the university has adopted, of course, would also signify this kind of respect for the ideas of others that we encourage. You are in your office in between advising appointments. Your door is open. Suddenly, you see a person go by in a hurry, trying to look away from you. You recognize the person as your colleague's soon-to-be ex-spouse. You know that they are in the middle of an acrimonious child custody dispute, and you are concerned for your colleague's safety. What would you do? Go out and stop the ex-spouse? Call the police and report it? Scream at the top of your lungs? Call to alert your colleague? Go out and stop the ex-spouse, from what you have heard and from Richard Herman's admonitions, is not a good idea. Call the police and report it is the correct answer. Scream at the top of your lungs. That probably would distract the situation, but is not a good idea. Call to alert your colleague. That would also be a good solution in this case. First call the police, then call your colleague to let him know or her know what is going on.
Okay, you know a large party is going on at one of the Greek houses, you know, word of mouth, things spread, and it's very loud, and it's obvious that there's alcohol involved. And there are a lot of young people there. What would you do, or what should you do? Call the KSU Greek Affairs. If there's a loud party going on, more than likely it's going to be late evening or night, and Greek Affairs isn't going to be open. You're just going to get an answering machine. Call the police. Confront them, or do both A and B. A, call of Greek Affairs would be correct, but you're going to be doing that the next morning after they open to report the incident. Like I said, because most of those the parties will be at night. Call the police, that would be correct. If we've got some young people there that are being exposed to high levels of alcohol, they may lose control of their mental stability during the event and do things that they normally wouldn't do, or get involved in things they normally wouldn't. So we're kind of contributing and creating a situation here that we need to get on too quick. So I think calling the police would be correct. Confront them. I don't know, I've been to some of these parties, not just Greek, but I've been to some large parties, been called in as a police officer, and even as a police officer in uniform, as an authority figure, with a gun, with OC spray, they still get very threatening and get very confrontational. Sometimes it does ensue where it's physical. So you as a civilian, as I might say, I wouldn't advise going and confronting them. Both A and B would be good answers for this case.
So next, we have a female student tells you that two friends have threatened to harm her if she converts to Islam. What would you do? Consult the Workplace Violence Committee. Take the student to the police department to file a report. Refer the student to the Office of Affirmative Action. Or refer the student to Student Life. Consulting the Workplace Violence Committee would not be a good approach just at this particular moment. But it would be correct to take the student to the police department. There has been a threat made against that person, and it should be immediately handled by the university police or by someone who is in that law enforcement authority. Referring her to the Office of Affirmative Action would not be a good response in this particular situation, because we do not deal with threats of that particular type. Referring the student to Student Life would not be as immediate a response as could be provided by the university police in reacting to that level of threat. Thanks.
Okay, you're in the classroom. You receive an emergency text message telling you that there's a dangerous situation in the building that you're in and that you should remain in the room. What should you do? Evacuate the building immediately. Call 911. Barricade doors and windows and keep a low profile. Or continue with the class as normal. Evacuate the building immediately. That's kind of contrary to what the message is telling you when you get it. Call 911. If you're getting a text message from our office, we probably already know about the incident. Barricade the doors and windows and keep a low profile. That would be a very good suggestion. If you can, whatever the situation may be, if you can keep it outside your classroom, not allow it in, that's one thing. That's the way to go. And to keep down and low, whatever's going on out there, you don't draw attention to yourself. They won't come in to your area. And continue with the class as normal probably wouldn't be a good idea.
Next. All right. A student organization has members who have been in a serious disagreement. One of the students posts unkind comments about the other on Facebook. As advisor of the organization, what should you do? Should you ignore the situation? Contact Facebook and ask them to remove the offending comments? C, talk to the members who posted the unkind comments and discuss appropriate communication. Ask them to stop making offending comments. D, have the victim file a K-State Code of Conduct complaint for verbal harassment. And the correct answers, well, of course, you're not going to want to ignore the situation. And a number of times with Facebook, because it seems like this is a situation that happens often, where people are upset about things other people have written on their wall, on their Facebook account, and they take offense to that, or someone writes about them in their Facebook page. And so it's pretty common that this happens, and our office has been contacted a number of times when these situations have happened. And we've found out that not only can we deal with the issue, but we can also call Facebook, and they'll remove the information. So that is one good thing to know. They'll remove it. And obviously, we want the advisor to talk with the members who posted the unkind comments and discuss appropriate communication. Ask them to stop making the offending comments. You know, sometimes it's amazing how oblivious students are to the kinds of comments they make about other people, like they think that person might never, ever see it, and it's in this public domain, and it's there, and people do learn of it. And so sometimes just to have a real sit down about, you realize this is public information. Everything you're putting out there can be seen anywhere, anytime. And so just to kind of have a learning moment with that student. And obviously, another step, a more serious step that could be taken is to have the victim file a code of conduct complaint and go through the student judicial process. And sometimes if it's a very serious or ongoing situation, that would definitely be the way to go. Okay.
Should we ask for questions?
All right. All right. Are there any questions as we wrap up that part, the quiz section of our presentation today? Were there anything that you had questions about or need clarification on? Yes.
About receiving an emergency text message saying there's a dangerous situation.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
What about classrooms that do not lock?
And that's a good question, and most of them do not lock. And that's for fire evacuation and safety reasons. Let's take this room, for instance. We've got a couple tables in here. You can fold them, flip them over in front of the door to help barricade them. If you've got the stuff available, some tape and some paper to cover the glass so they can't peer in. There's many different things, several chairs up in front of the door. and then try and get yourself in a position where if they do look in the windows or in, they don't see. Turn off the lights, mute the phones, turn the ringers off, this type of thing, and try and stay out of the line of fire per se, or vision from the doorways, and this type of thing. So there are just several different things. Like, yes, this is an issue as far as the locking of the doors, because many of them do not for fire safety and evacuation reasons.
We'd like to spend just a few minutes here at the end bringing crisis prevention to kind of a schematic presentation that I hope will help you understand the different levels of crisis response and what we have in place here at K-State for each one of those crisis response levels. Obviously, when you talk about services that all students receive on campus that are supportive in nature and educational, we've got a number of those. There are the ongoing supportive services, positive campus climate, academic support, clubs and organization with community values. So these kinds of support and educations, we just have a wealth of them across campus. These are organizations that all students can get involved in. There's some that might be specifically for certain groups, but they're all that supportive, how we expect our campus to be as far as support and encouragement, and lots of different activities for students to get involved with, because we know that when students are engaged with all this kind of support and education, that they're going to do better. We know that. We know that they're also going to feel like that this is a place that values them as students, and hopefully will help them continue to make progress towards their degree and ultimately graduate. So a good firm foundation of the support and education is our first line of defense against crises. Then, based on that foundation, then, we have early intervention steps that we can take for students with problems that need additional support and accommodation. So you have your foundational kind of support. And then in addition to that, you have some early interventions, which include academic assistance, whether that be tutoring, study groups, advisors. Of course, through our office, we're doing the problem-solving, referral, advocacy kinds of things. When a student's having issue with financial aid, we've got great financial advisors, and we also have payment plans, so ways that we can help them with those types of issues that might come up. We have wonderful disability support services for students with disabilities that provide them support and assist them with accommodations. Lafine does a great job through their medical side and women's clinic side. Also do some additional support with eating disorders and alcohol and other drug services. For international students, we have the additional line of help through our International Student Center, and for support and assistance. Counseling services is a great first intervention for all kinds of medical health or mental health issues. They also have biofeedback and small group counseling, so great services, additional services there. We have a student attorney that provides legal services to our students. SGA pays for that individual, and they're housed downstairs on the lower level of the union in the Office of Student Activities and Services. Free legal services to students who may need it. Greek Affairs provides great support to those students who are involved in sororities and fraternities. Of course, our residence hall has an incredible staff of residence assistants and directors who do all kinds of programming to help students who are also there, 24/7 to talk with students when they're struggling and having problems. And of course, our Women's Center for advice on relationship or when there's been a case where a student needs some advocacy. So that's our early intervention, those situations that need just some extra help. Then the next, as we kind of go up the pyramid here, from our foundation to our additional support, now we go into critical intervention. And this is an incident that will require a policy response. So when something is is more severe or critical, then there may be additional steps that will be taken. For instance, if there's problems in the residence hall, an incident happens there that is a fairly serious incident, then they can have their own judicial hearing. And ultimately, they have the ability to have a contract hearing, which means that if the student has had a very severe violation of the housing policy, they can actually be removed from housing. And it's through a housing contract. Harassment, discrimination, sexual violence, we would kick right into our affirmative action policy or sexual violence policy. And once again, then Mary, as an advocate, would, if needed, to go to the hospital with the victim, help them talk to the police, whatever kind of additional support. When we get to this critical kind of thing, we also can use our code of conduct and take that through our student judicial hearing. If it's an academic problem or an honor violation, obviously we work with the honor code, our department or dean's heads or dean's offices, and just like Susanna told you, all the great information from the provost's office about how they can help faculty that are dealing with disruptive students in the classroom. For serious mental health concerns, we'll either utilize counseling services, or often, if it's going to be a long-term counseling situation, we'll refer those students to Pawnee Mental Health or other local therapists here in town or in the student's home community. Greek Affairs, when they have a major incident, they have policies through their Panhellenic and IFC, which are the governing bodies for the fraternities and sororities. And they also have a judicial process that they go through when there have been violations of their policies. Of course, we always looked at Lafayette, Mercy Hospital, EMS for that medical support on more critical interventions, and the K-State Police. At this level, you may have a violation of the law, and this may also be a time when we're concerned about a student who we may have learned has made a suicide threat, and we'll do a wellness check, or the police will, not we, the police will do a wellness check where they'll go to that student's apartment or wherever they live and talk to the students, see how they're doing, and find out what's going on for them, and make appropriate referrals. So that's the critical interventions that all apply, that some type of policy response is needed. And then finally, the crisis, the serious threat to the campus or to an individual. And so in this case, we're talking about serious medical emergencies or suicide. A campus response for a serious crisis like if we had a tornado, imagine that, or an ice storm, imagine that. Then we've got a campus response that begins with administration and the police. And they go through their problem solving, decide how our response is going to go forward. And then the Crisis Management Committee is also kind of an arm of that process then to put in place some of the strategies then for dealing with a serious campus crisis. Also, if it involves a student at this point, and maybe at the earlier level too, we may need to notify parents, and the Office of Student Life is the office on campus that's charged with contacting parents. And once again, with FERPA and our requirements for keeping student information confidential, whenever we have a health or safety, well-being concern for a student, we absolutely can call parents, and we absolutely do call parents. We feel like they can be a team member in helping us with this student when there's a serious concern. So our office would be who calls parents in at the hopefully very appropriate point. Violence, if we have violence on campus, obviously the police, maybe Riley County Police in conjunction with our police, will put together that response, and other offices on campus will assist them. And when we have issues of violence, if it's a student who is involved in this violence, we'd look at immediate suspension or expulsion, because the safety of our campus is our #1 concern when we have a crisis like that. So we have the ability to do that. Mental health-wise, we have, once again, our resources that we look to at the Counseling Services in Pawnee. We also have a policy called the involuntary withdrawal due to mental health or mental illness. And this is a policy actually we're working on to kind of update a bit, but basically allows us, if a student has a severe mental health issue and they're not willing to go get help, and that's ultimately what we hope, is that they're part of they're willing to go get help. But if they're not willing to get help and they're being disruptive in our classrooms, then based on their behavior, we can expel them or suspend them for a time while they're getting treatment. And then to return, they'd need to provide some documentation from a therapist that they were well, that they had received treatment and were able to function well in the academic setting. For other campus emergencies, you're talking fire, natural disasters, and the police and the fire department would lead the response and direct everyone in conjunction. The K-State Environmental Health and Safety also would work in conjunction with the police and the administration to provide, to plan the response to those types of serious crises. So, time for any questions that you might have. Our thought with the intervention, the crisis intervention pyramid, is that it gives you an idea of how it all builds. That we have a lot of interventions that are a foundation to our whole university, but as we get more critical and they involve policies or major crises, then there's different ways that we respond based on the needs of that crisis. So, hope that was helpful as you think this big topic through. So, go ahead.
Sorry. I wanted to also add that we have seen the pyramid as it relates to students, mostly to students, but there are some parallel services and resources for faculty, staff, both unclassified and classified, so that as employees of the state, for example, we have access to Lifeline, to Health Quest. So there are there's the other side also, so that ideally the needs of all of the members of the university community can be addressed through a number of resources. Thank you very much for your participation, and if there are no more questions, we are at the end of our presentation.